My dearest friends and colleagues, it has been a while since we virtually saw each other the last time. Another year has turned around and with endless possibilities of plenty new beginnings. So I sincerely wish you a happy and prosperous new year. Thank you so much for your participation today in this first, not the last, definitely, webinar of 2023. And today we are happy to have a wider audience, and we proudly welcome all curious boards, CVBs, TMMOs from around Europe and beyond, as well as some industry representatives. Welcome warmly to all of you. We are really pleased to continue this series of initiatives to keep on sharing our expertise, to seek inspiration, to support each other, to sharing, which is and will be the core of CityDNA, and only we together are and can reshape our sustainable and regenerative future for healthier balance. As we at City Destinations Alliance do believe that the need for strategic destination management is greater than ever before. We help DMOs to demonstrate that from visitor economy can benefit them. Destinations, social inclusion, the culture, repertoire, and relations, the knowledge societies, the local communities. DMOs are definitely instrumental for strategic city management. We act as agenda setters, we project initiations, we are facilitators for the many stakeholders, definitely working for a better city. And today we are with the biggest pleasure introducing this special and distinctive report on understanding the challenges and opportunities in transitioning of urban areas towards holistic placemaking, because cities are definitely melting pots, gateways to other cities and regions, but most of all, cities are with all the uniquenesses are our home. So we will be talking from stagflation to growth, to tourism growth, from global warming to talent attractions, public health resilience to technologies. We will present you a series of takeaways that can guide the mandate of placemaking and marketing organizations, given, of course, that the city must be attractive for citizens and, of course, for our visitors as well. So we will try to answer the questions: what can we do to help restoring the confidence, health, the solidarity, the support, the vitality, the agency, the curiosity for people, how to improve our places and the process how to get there. All the big questions that we are basically asking ourselves daily. So on behalf of City Destinations Alliance, we would really like to thank Toposophy for producing this report and guide us through this perma crisis, actually. They have made an important contribution to picture the latest trends of our industry, and we can only acknowledge their expertise and professionalism. I really sincerely invite you to download the brand new CityDNA Insight reports with the title Exploring the Emergency Role of the Placemaking and Marketing Organizations from our CityDNA, City Destinations Alliance website. It's really interesting. I went through all the details and I really encourage you to download it and go through it. Thank you again, friends from Toposophy, for supporting us. And I now leave the floor to Peter Jordan and Marta Mills, who will moderate this session today. But I would also very much like to acknowledge big thanks to our member and our friend, Caroline Strand from Stockholm, who will actually share how much the report's content resonate with Visit Stockholm and what approaches Visit Stockholm is making in the area of placemaking. So please feel free to share comments, your reactions, your thoughts, your questions in the chat. and Peter and Marta will take them over, will comment them at the end of the webinar. I trust you will find the analysis contained and the report very helpful whenever you seek the inspiration or answers to your questions, and that you will be continuing making future trends. Dear members and industry friends, enjoy and see you soon. Peter, Marta, the virtual floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Petra. Thank you for your kind introduction. You've mentioned a lot of different subjects there, so we're going to try and keep our webinar as concise as possible. Not easy when we have so much, of course, to look at, but we're very grateful for you all joining us this afternoon. And we know that we have, I'm just going to share my screen. We know that we have organizations of many different types with us, a lot of people who are very curious about this topic. We have many people, of course, from the world of the visitor economy, from the tourism sector, but also others too. Of course, what we're going to talk about today does have links to the visitor economy, as of course we know that the members of the City Destinations Alliance certainly have their roots in that sector, but we are also going to make a bold appeal to look beyond that and to try and bring in other sectors and form linkages with other sectors. We've been talking about it for a long time, and we hope that with this report we're taking another step towards that, certainly. So with that, I've just a brief introduction. My name is Peter Jordan. I'm Head of Insights with Toposophy, and I'm very happy to be here this afternoon with my colleague, Marta Mills, who is going to be sharing later on some of the case studies that we'd like to show off. And later in our presentation, just following our presentation, we'll be having an interview with Caroline Strand. We're delighted that Caroline's joining us from Visit Stockholm this afternoon. So just a quick reminder of who we are. Toposophy works seamlessly across 4 areas: research and intelligence, strategy and consulting, marketing and branding, and creative platforms and events. And we are a very proud partner of the City Destinations Alliance now for more than 7 years. And together we've been creating generating quite a lot of insights together and constantly pushing the agenda forward. So I'm going to jump straight in here. And we recognize, first of all, that the term place is not always an easy term to grasp. It's certainly one that's been cropping up when we talk in policy terms. It's certainly not new. It's been around for a while now. But I also find it curious that, for example, when we talk about place branding or place marketing or place making, there isn't always, for example, an obvious translation into many other languages, which already sometimes causes a bit of an obstacle. Also, of course, it's true that different people have a different perception, a different concept of what place means to them. That's normal, but of course, it's something that we have to keep in mind when we're talking policy. But for us, and especially when we talk about the looking beyond destination marketing towards place marketing, or from destination management towards place making, place management, for us it's certainly a logical continuation of the research and the recommendations that we have been working on for the City Destinations Alliance for the past 7 years. Just to give you a quick recap, and all of these are available for free to download on the City Destinations Alliance website. Many of the work that we've produced with City DNA over the past few years has, in the end, of course, always looked beyond tourism and the visitor economy. And the manifest on the future of the MMOs, which we produced back in 2017, presented it back in Dubrovnik. This certainly looked beyond, and it called to DMOs to it set out a fresh new agenda and a fresh new manifest for what they could do. The same even when we were looking at tourism growth, because by definition, talking about a toolbox on tourism growth in 2018, by definition, we're talking about the impact on local people and the local environment. So it's just a couple of examples there. So here we are in 2023 now. We produced this report and it was released just before Christmas last year. So it's less than a month. It's actually less than a month old already. Exploring the emerging role of the placemaking and marketing organization. And as Petra said, this publication is already available free of charge on the website. I'll show you that in a second, and I'll also give you a reminder of what that is at the end of this presentation, so you certainly won't miss it. What's inside, if we unpack it? we talk about this shift in focus from destination to the concept of place. We look at 10 macro challenges that will shape city life in the next decade. I'm going to go into those in a bit more detail shortly, as well as, of course, these 8 areas of action that we set out to improve places and support people, as well as a collection of inspiring case studies and useful definitions. So just as a quick reminder then, if you want to quickly note it down, again, you'll receive the link and you can find it at the end of this presentation as well. This is where you can find this free report to browse it. So what on earth do we mean then by this term, the placemaking and marketing organization? Well, as we explain, essentially, in essence, the placemaking and marketing organization is, you could call it a reimagined partnership between different public and private organizations that work together to pool their knowledge and skills in order to respond to the challenges and opportunities that cities and people will face in the coming decades. It's hard, I can point out already, it's hard to point to any one single organization out there and say, yes, that's a perfect model placemaking and marketing organization. Because the fact is that such an organization is going to look different in order to serve the needs of each place. What we're talking about, though, or what we'd like to inspire people with, are some of the key areas that we think in the future and a collection of organizations can work on, an agenda that they can work on by pooling knowledge and skills in the future. So also, I think it's important to point out at this stage that what we're not talking about is just the next logical step from the world of the DMO to the DMMO, so Destination Marketing Organization, to Destination Marketing and Management Organization. And then the next simple step on this page, on this route, is a PMMO, a Placemaking and Marketing Organization. That's not necessarily what we're saying here, because we really are talking about something that looks quite different. And during the presentation this afternoon, we hope to explain how that is, how that is different. So as I said, let's unpack then a little bit. What are we talking about? Well, our starting point then is the fact that we do, of course, live in very tumultuous times. As we can see, the Collins Dictionary of the Word in 2022 was permacrisis, perhaps an interesting and very prescient choice of photo, I'd say, as well, but that the BBC chose. But yes, essentially this permacrisis is this feeling of living through a period of war, inflation, and political instability. We've seen very clearly, and 2022 was certainly the year that reminded us of this, when we talk about energy or even the price of grain, that global problems can very quickly become local problems. When we talk about how, of course, issues and problems and conflicts that occur in countries many thousands of miles away can ultimately affect the prices that we're paying and how people feel locally. And of course, given that cities are where people concentrate, it's perhaps inevitable then that the world's challenges will end up on our doorstep, or on our doorstep in one way or another. If you're responsible for, if you work in city authorities in one way or another, it's kind of hard to agree with. It's kind of hard to disagree with this. That many of the world's challenges that end up as something that we have to try and deal with. So those distant challenges are not theoretical. They're already here. So you may recall, as I mentioned, the manifest on the future of DMOs, already back in 2017, we pointed out, and this was the very first recommendation that we made in that publication, and we said, look at life through this local lens of sustainability, because it's essential if you want to avoid the worst case scenario, which is burnout from over-tourism and backlash from local people. Now, over-tourism, of course, is one of the issues that cities have to deal with, but as we're going to explain this afternoon, there are many different issues, of course, that the modern placemaking and marketing organization will have to deal with. But this all comes down to the fact that local residents then, and long-term residents, can ultimately be your biggest asset, and because they are invested in your place at all levels, so work with them. So this was already back in 2017 that we were pointing this out. Fast forward then, and this was from research that was carried out across almost 13,000 people in 25 cities last year, and we can see that affordability has become a critical issue in urban centres. I think we're seeing this everywhere. And what's interesting is just the way that this research was done, because they looked at how people who work remotely or have the ability to work remotely, and then those who don't who don't have the ability to work remotely. So perhaps those in blue-collar jobs, customer-facing jobs, and often public services, jobs you can't do from home, like driving a bus or teaching or nursing, and how people feel about their city and how they feel about the place that they live, and how optimistic they are about their city's future. And we can see here some of the key differences there. So those we see respondents in North America, they're most likely to say they're living from paycheck to paycheck, but I think there's many people in European cities too who are certainly living in those circumstances. And also, of course, we have to think about the younger generations in particular, and the cost of rent and things like that. So ultimately, how much money you have and how much flexibility you have does affect how you see the place where you live and how much faith you have that things and problems around you can be sorted out. So, as we said, local people are definitely feeling the effects of these crises and long-term macro challenges. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, we're going to see in a second a bit more about those. So it's also, if we're honest, and this is quite depressing but true, it's unsurprising that many people do feel quite powerless and disconnected when we see how much is happening. Because in a globalized world, these issues are, of course, all interconnected. Now, as the opening stages of this report, the Toposophy team, we did quite a lot of discussion, internal discussion, a lot of background research. And we put together here a collection of 10 competing macro challenges, because of course it's hard to say that any one challenge is bigger or ultimately more important than the others. It all depends on how you look at them. And I'm going to share them with you here. Now I'm going to, this is just take a quick vision of what they are, the 10 challenges that we identified. And I'll give you just a second to read through them. So these are the 10 major competing macro challenges that we outlined, and we think that these are the issues that cities in particular, of course regions as well, national governments are struggling to manage these. But as I say, sometimes the consequences of these are most keenly seen in city streets and in neighborhoods and in the way people interact, because this is where populations are concentrated. So what I'd like to do just very quickly is just to focus on 3 of these, as you got just highlighted. I'm going to just quickly jump in and explain why these issues are so relevant. Just to jump in then and talk about keeping cities cool. Now, in 2022, 12 European countries experienced their hottest year ever. And just a few days ago, just a couple of weeks ago, on the 1st of January, New Year's Day, 8 European countries experienced their warmest ever New Year's Day. That's just to very quickly capture and explain how quickly this situation is evolving. And I'm sure many of you will remember back to last summer when places around Europe were really trying to contend with very challenging issues to do with heat waves as well. So what does this mean for the future, and especially how is this going to affect people in cities? Well, a greater share of the population is going to face what we call heat stress. So these are often poorer, elderly, pregnant or vulnerable people, or those who work outside the most. Just in last year in the heat wave in the summer, 4 council workers, people who were responsible for keeping the streets clean, 4 people died in Madrid from a result of the intense heat there. Just to give you one example. The demand for cooler space then will also mean these sort of contested spaces. What does this mean? It's one of these situations where people go and jump in the fountain or head to the park in order to get some shade as well. But then also milder weather can also extend and change where we are with promoting events that happen at other times of the year as well. So yes, we can see then one of the consequences for people and cities is that this is forcing changes in behavior. And it's something ultimately that city authorities will have to manage. Let's take a look at another one of those challenges, keeping the local economy moving and particularly attracting skilled workers. And we know that there are many industries there that are facing skill shortages right now. So this means that cities are going to have to compete in order to win people. They're going to have to compete on articulating better the opportunities that you can find in that city to advance your career goals, to compete on the cost of living and affordable housing, which we know is a real challenge. And then the quality of life and values and sense of belonging in a very globally mobile workforce. So we think that methods of comparing and measuring these are going to become more sophisticated, but also it'll be important for cities to help people and their families help feel more integrated too. Again, I know I'm skipping through these issues quite quickly. There's way more detail you'll be able to find in the report. But just to highlight this other third challenge then, which challenge number 7 out of 8, is about increasing public health resilience. Of course, COVID-19 revealed how the unequal impacts of the pandemic on poorer and marginalized communities. The aging population means that we'll have to try and keep people mobile and independent for longer. And also things like financial worries and solo living and working and tech burnout, they all have an effect on mental health and how much people feel related to those around them and how much they want to go out and feel like going out. So cities will have to find creative ways to keep people moving and eating healthily and improve their mental well-being. So I've just pointed out 3 of those challenges in depth there, but we of course highlight 10 challenges in total. So our central question then is, what can we do as cities, as people who care about cities, what can we do to help restore that confidence, health, solidarity, support, vitality, agency, and curiosity for people? Because if we get it right for people, then it will get it right for places. So this is the let's say an agenda. It's one which we would like to propose. It's certainly not set in stone, but this is where we believe are the most relevant areas that cities can help to address in the interests of their citizens and by contrast also their visitors as well. And we're now just going to briefly touch on these. We'll also just share with you some interesting examples of how some cities are taking this on as well. So the first area then we believe is going to be fundamental is attracting people then who bring value to the city. And that means then identifying and attracting visitors, of course, who align with the city's strengths and its values, attracting skilled workers in specific sectors, and then attracting and helping to start that seeding of new footloose centers, for example, the creative or the tech industries, or attracting tribes, for example, the long stay market, digital nomads, who can help to extend the visitor season. Now, Marta Mills, our senior project manager, is with us this afternoon, and I know, Marta, you're going to just briefly explain to us some of the interesting cases that we found. So this we'll find on the next one as we go through. Articulating place narratives, it's telling the positive side of who we are and also helping to bring out the voices that we don't often hear as well. So this is another point 2 on this agenda, the 8 areas, would be things like supporting local businesses and helping them to use local identity as a key marketing tool, engaging with people to articulate and celebrate their stories, and then ensuring that cities' different communities are equally and accurately represented. So Marta, I think it's an interesting one because it says we talk about the civic, humane and positive elements of our local identity, which is how the Place Branding Organization highlights it. Marta, perhaps you could tell us a bit more about the Helsinki Freedom work.
Yes, thank you, Peter. So just to bring you an example of how a city can articulate a place narrative and also attractive talent, we brought you a city of Helsinki. So this is an example of a Helsinki Freedom video series that was produced by Helsinki Partners. So it's a city marketing, investment and talent attraction company owned by the city of Helsinki. And they responded to a challenge to demonstrate to future residents the cornerstone of good life in Helsinki, which is work-life balance, safety, very good quality, free education, equality and free and easy access to nature. So Helsinki Partners produced a mini documentary video series on some of these many opportunities that they call the freedoms that Helsinki offers. And they were told by the new residents who have come to Helsinki over the last decade and who experience these new freedoms every day. And the Helsinki city of Helsinki hopes to encourage new tech talent and also any other talent to the city, and that will be inspired and encouraged by the freedoms and try this good life in Helsinki every day. And also the idea was that anyone in the world can see that Helsinki is the city of the free, that can provide the freedom to its residents, and also that anyone in the world can sort of see and experience these freedoms from the corner and the comfort of their own sofa, and be encouraged to come and try and become a new resident of the city.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Marta. So moving on then to the third area of 8 that we were talking about, and this is around place and space activation. And we're aware that especially organizations coming from the visitor economy have an interest in this, but they haven't necessarily always taken this on as a direct area of their work. But we think that increasingly it will be important to pool skills and work on this. So what does this mean? Ultimately, you heard me talk about supporting healthy lifestyles, combating loneliness, mental health problems, and also encouraging people to keep moving with what we call what we're calling playful cities. It's really important to help keep people moving and socializing. So this can also involve developing people-centered events and playful architecture, as we said, to nurture socialization and build these intercultural relations. Because in diverse cities, it's important that we try and support that harmony, because there's a lot of people out there who are trying to put it apart, as well as then reinventing spaces as uses change. Moving on then, the fourth area, supporting community engagement. So community engagement, we know that it's a fundamental pillar when you're preparing a strategy, but it's something that has to be ongoing and we have to work on consistently. But we know that it's something that cities don't always find easy to do. So ultimately, this is about then building links between the city's inhabitants and the place they live in. So, for example, supporting local democracy, supporting initiatives that build solidarity between people, and there's as well, especially building engagement with underrepresented communities too. Or, of course, co-developing programs that help citizens then to feel safer and more connected to their fellow city inhabitants. We live in a very atomized world now where people are, of course, working from home, but of course, an aging population, often there's a lot of solo living. And it's also a situation which, if we allow it to get out of hand, this loneliness can sometimes even breed radicalization. So my aim here is not to scare the hell out of everyone, but also basically to underline how important it is that cities work at this socialization and helping for people to actually meet each other and discover how much they have in common. And Marta, interesting work then in Glasgow.
So this is a case study from Glasgow about the Centre for Civic Innovation. It's a pioneering citizen-centered design team within Glasgow City Council. And the vision of this team is to inspire and encourage the citizens of Glasgow to create a better future, work together to create a better future for everybody. So the challenge is to find new, creative and socially innovative ways to address changing demands from citizens that every city faces and solve the city challenges. And a network of designers and solvers, they call them solvers, among Glasgow residents, was created to co-design the city they want to live in, and working together between residents and the team of the Glasgow Civic Centre for Innovation. They work on projects such as tackling child poverty, homelessness, or negative impacts of climate change of the city. And as an outcome, there is a better understanding already of complex societal problems that are definitely and very often difficult to articulate and have no single answers. And also the solutions come from design thinking, sort of research and data science rather than assumptions, what problems the society in Glasgow faces.
Great, thank you very much. So then let's look at the fifth area then, and this very much focuses on health and well-being in particular. This can be as diverse as championing local food producers, especially in supporting them with their marketing, but also helping them to connect them better with local suppliers, and local retailers, and even local schools and hospitals to help support better nutrition for local people and combat food waste. Also can involve a lot of nudging visitors and residents towards active travel, especially walking and cycling. So really encourage, and we know a lot of cities are doing this well already, but there are many creative ways to do it. And then to use creative placemaking then to provide an environment that helps local people to be healthy and thrive. And Marta, we found an interesting example here in the US.
So the city of Jersey in the US is an interesting one. It's a city of over a 250,000 residents, where 10% of them are diabetic and 25% are obese. So there was a cooperation between City Council and tech startup in urban farming to create vertical farms installations to provide better nutrition and regular access to fresh, locally grown and cheap food for particularly poor residents of the country, of the city, sorry. And as an outcome, it is envisioned that those vertical farms will be located at 10 key city sites, and they expect to deliver approximately £1,900 of fresh produce to residents every year that will be free of charge and improve the nutrition of the poorest residents of the city.
Excellent, thank you very much. So on to the sixth area then, and here we come back to look at tourism and the impact that it has on cities. And ultimately here we talk about striking a balance, and in particular tackling some of the burdens that tourism can place on local life. So we have been working on the subject of tourism growth, over tourism for quite some time now. And it seems that some of the most important and most relevant areas here must include identifying and monitoring those, what we call pinch points. So those are some of the issues or visitor behaviors that are causing really acute specific problems in specific places, and to ensure that they can be managed more effectively. Facilitating dialogue, so bringing citizens together as well as with local businesses and other decision makers to ensure that these burdens are addressed and that they're properly talked about, and also then to improve communication then to help visitors make more responsible choices. There's a lot of work going on here to try and help visitors and ensure that people make environmentally responsible choices, and also sometimes involve some visitor education to tackle some challenging behaviors that can occur related to tourism, as well as then facilitating this positive engagement between residents and visitors, for example, through cultural or community-based tourism. There are many exciting things happening in this space, and we know that the City DNA community are very interested in this and working hard on it. So yeah, just to give a quick example then, Marta from Berlin.
So in Berlin now, residents have a formal voice into the development of tourism in the city through a new initiative created by the city in cooperation with Visit Berlin, called the Berlin Citizen Advisory Council. And the challenge was to create like a permanent interface between the state of Berlin and the residents, with an advisory function to address the impacts of tourism. And last August, the city invited its citizens, anyone who is 18 years and over can apply for a 3-year membership to be member of the council. There will be 24 members, 2 from each of 12 districts in Berlin. They will meet 4 times a year. They will also be organizing meetings of working groups and public events where the residents will be able to come and express their views. There will also be, the council is also responsible for organizing the Citizens Forum. And again, there will be fora in each district where residents will be able to come and express their views about city development, tourism development, protecting the distinctive culture and preserving a city for residents and for tourists. And as an outcome, it's a very new initiative, but the city is hoping to share knowledge, discuss issues around social, economic, environmental impacts of tourism on residents, but also identify potential conflicts and support a good relationship between Berliners and visitors.
Great, thank you very much, Marta. So I'm aware that we have just moving on then, we've got just a couple more areas to highlight to you with this. The next area, and this involves essentially research and analytics, but it's understanding then how people really behave rather than how we think we do. And this is involving the use of place analytics, lots of creative ways in which to understand how people are behaving in our cities, where they want to go, where they're really spending their time, what they think of it. And also this can help us make very informed decision making about neighborhood development as well. So there are lots of smart ways of doing it. We've carried out a lot of research on this over recent years, but we're very firm believers that data has to be the tool in order to support the case in investment in urban regeneration or servicing the visitor economy. It can no longer be based on opinions, but increasingly we have to get creative about the way that we're measuring this. And then we'll have one more case in a second from Marta when we look at transitioning towards new forms of partnership. So this final area that we've set out is around the way that we work, and in terms of exploring new ways in which we can compose our organizations. As I said, it's difficult to point to any one particular organization and say, yes, this is a perfect example of a placemaking and marketing organization, but we certainly live in times when cities everywhere are in the need to sort of take a step back and reevaluate how their services are organized and perhaps do this in a more integrated way. It can be cities, but we found an interesting case from a region because of course, some of you may be familiar with the fact that some DMOs are looking towards moving towards becoming a social enterprise. But ultimately, we're going to look at that in a second, but ultimately we must make the point that placemaking and marketing organizations does have to have updated governance structures and legal frameworks that will reflect an updated purpose, as well as the diversity of the local community. And that's an important point there too. So Marta, just finally from Vancouver Island.
So some of you may have heard that a regional DMO, Tourism Vancouver Island in British Columbia and Canada, made an industry-led transition to become a social enterprise. That was last April 2022. Tourism Vancouver Island was a 60-year-old DMO that needed to change with the times, but particularly after COVID. The purpose of the DMO and the role has required a shift to address new challenges related to tourism, but also to stewardship, to better stewardship curation of the destination. And in April 22, that shift has happened. The Tourism Vancouver Island became a social enterprise with a mission to support sustainable future of Vancouver Island. And so it's called 4VI, and the social enterprise, so it's a business, will still manage marketing projects, it will still do some advisory work, but with its mission that all the revenue will be reinvested back into social responsible initiatives and projects, and also in organizations that support the social responsibility and stewardship of the destination. They're at the moment working on new KPIs that will focus on supporting the well-being of communities, culture, and the environment, promoting better stewardship of the destination, and again, with the vision to reinvest profits into improving the community's business, culture, and environment of Vancouver Island.
Great, thank you very much. And we recognize that it's certainly early days, but we certainly wish them well, and we look forward to seeing how that pans out. So at this stage, I'd just like to wrap up this side of this part of the presentation with some quick takeaways of where we've reached so far. And it's a reminder, as we said in our manifest on the future of DMOs back in 2017, social sustainability must come first. And ultimately, our first responsibility is to local residents, and that's our starting point. It's obvious then that major global challenges are having local impacts, and people need help in navigating these. But actually, rather than just seeing this as a huge workload and a mountain to climb, ultimately, to try and help people through these challenges, we can see this as an opportunity when it comes to creative placemaking and marketing. So we might be wondering then, what about DMOs in all of this? Well, we feel that amongst the backdrop of the 10 challenges, the legitimacy and the mandate of DMOs just to keep focusing on tourism only, and we know that many are moving beyond that already, we feel that legitimacy and mandate is likely to be challenged further, and local people may not be so sympathetic when tourism starts to really put pressure on local services. And we recognize, of course, that DMOs cannot and should not take on all of these challenges alone. By nature, it involves working with others. But we do believe that DMOs do have the knowledge and skills to support their communities, especially when combined with other specialists in the cities. So this process of building a placemaking and marketing organization through reskilling staff, reallocating resources, and linking with new partners will definitely look different in each place. There is no one single magic formula. But it's definitely time to reimagine how we're supporting our people and our places. And with that in mind, we're very excited to be joined this afternoon by our friend Caroline Strand from Visit Stockholm. And Caroline, we're interested, we're very grateful for you joining us this afternoon. And you were with a group of CEOs who we managed to have the opportunity to talk about these issues with and gather insights from in Valencia in November last year, which was really good memories of that. So yeah, I'm really curious to get your insight on what we've been presenting this afternoon, and perhaps hear first of all, to ask you which parts of our presentation have resonated most with you, and where you are from a strategic point of view in all of this.
I think it's so interesting because this is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's about our role, it's about the city challenges, and everything comes together. And in the middle of this, it's what are we going to do about it? What kind of role are we going to play? And we have really been discussing this in the city DNA for a couple of years. And I have to say that Stockholm is really taking all those strategic decisions that we take in the city DNA, and we turn them alive directly, because we understand that this work we do, and now when we work with this part, with Toposophy, with you, Peter, and your colleagues, and Marta, it's so inspiring, because one thing that you do in this work is that you sort everything out for us in a great way. There's so many things that we need to understand, and that's so much we know, but it's helpful to sort this out in a PMMO perspective. I always, if you would ask my staff, they would say trust and engagement. She always talk about trust. But if you want to make that village to a village, then it all starts with trust. And I think that part of your work is really described in a very good way, an interesting way. And it also gave me some new ideas how I need to push things a bit and nudge things a bit. But I also think it's interesting, and we have been working for a time I mean, it's all about relevance for sure. And when you talk about quality of life, we have been saying quality of life so much in marketing, but what is quality of life? And when we take quality of life as a marketing tourist organization a couple of years ago and worked together with Invest Stockholm and Stockholm Business Region and all the most important partners in the city of Stockholm that we work very closely, but we usually work next to each other. But a couple of years ago, okay, if we bring all these target groups together in the digital development and see what the stakeholders and the target group really wants, what will they tell us? And then, of course, they say that visitors and talents, they work exactly. They have the same way of making choices.
Interesting.
To build trust, to choose a destination, and so on. And then we took all this, the digital platform, and we really, okay, organization, we have different culture, everything, it doesn't matter. We have to put placemaking first, and then we can do marketing. So that's one thing. It's all about relevance. It's all about find your city assets and to solve the challenges in the city. And you put up very many of them. And I think that they all are interesting. It's also so interesting when you take these 10 sectors or chapters, then no one works for themselves. I mean, everybody works for each other and in groups. So you can't pick one. You have to work these perspective, and then you have to build it into cluster development.
Very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, so it's interesting that no one of those 8 areas that we set out can be handled just by one organization where they say, yeah, we'll take care of that. And it has, by definition, it has to involve partner working. Yeah. So we're we mentioned, so many organizations, or call it peers of yours in the city DNA, have traditionally been focused on promotion, or more recently, place marketing. So why do you think it increasingly makes sense for them to get involved in place making as well? And I know that's something that Stockholm is sort of doing a bit more. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about that.
Since 2019, I had a department for placemaking.
Okay.
So I of course have a department for marketing development, market development also, and positioning and so on. But it took some, I mean, you have to cut somewhere to get something. And today, a couple of years later, the marketers understand that the gold is in placemaking, because it's all about the stakeholders and the ownership. And I mean, to make inhabitants and owners, we have politicians, we're fully owned by the city, but I think this is for every ownership. And to make the stakeholders to understand the power of using our organization as a tool for development. You need to be a tool for development. You can't like be talking about other people's development or so on, and you have to be in the movement. And I think also that's about relevance, and not to be proud of responsible for sector development. Be proud to be a part of creating a better city. And I mean, when you talk about cities' challenges and you talk about the strength we have with all this trust that we are building with stakeholders, that we can change, we are change leaders, we can work from practical things to policy in a day. We can just work it all. We have the whole spectrum. There's not so many businesses in a city that really can have that point of view and can finalize it. Yeah. So I think that it's all about, if you do this, then the politicians will see your work, because they won't see what you are doing in America. They won't wake up in the morning and say, wow, I'm going to be elected again if they are doing this job in America. It is like that, because if we are not doing the work all over the world, then our cities will become small, narrow places. But in the short perspective, they can't always see it. And we can struggle trying to make them understand. But then we have this placemaking gold. And we can also make content come alive, development come alive, make the movement, and then being interactive with our stakeholders and our politicians.
I see. So you're saying it's important that local politics, basically it is important that you do this work close to home, and you work closely with local residents, because this is something that local decision makers can see. As well.
Yeah, and it's not only because they can see it, it's also a good tool for us, because when we today, it started out a little bit like that, because they didn't understand why they should have us. They understood that we were doing something good, but they couldn't really touch it. But when we were working closer and closer and closer to the inhabitants and the stakeholders, we found out so much things that's really groundbreaking for us. Today we asked now 2,300 inhabitants about what they think about this summer, the first summer after the pandemic, and what they think about events and how they want the movements in the city center. And that is opening something else, and we do it together with the city development department, who has all the power and the money in the city. And of course, they learn from us, and we learn from them, and we learn from the inhabitants. And nobody would like to come to a city it's not close to the inhabitants. I mean, we want to put the inhabitants in something that they can watch. We want to mix, because we just don't want people to just come here, take a picture and go. We want them to take a part of the DNA in Stockholm and bring it somewhere in the world where we can mix up and be an open world and city for everyone.
Awesome, that's really good to hear. Thank you. So I'm really curious, just as a final question there, and I can see you've been working hard on so many different areas, but based upon what you've learned so far, and some of the issues we've talked about, what advice would you give other CEOs in other European cities who are considering moving into some of the areas that we have discussed today?
Yeah, I think it's important you have to take the mandate to get the mandate. But when you take new mandate and you inspire other departments or stakeholders to work with you, then you have to move your structure, the structural mandate also. I mean, you can't just be the one who's inspiring everyone. You have to reinforce your structure to meet up with your new case all the time. And I think that's important. We have been working very hard with reshaping city center. And we bring in the school from the suburbs into the dialogue. I mean, God, everybody's from the beginning. No, we were supposed to talk about how shops can be something else. Yeah, that's why we are doing this. Because if we can't bring in the Generation Z into the discussion, then we won't plan for the future. And as quick as they are on the hook, understanding this, we have to shape a good structure with a clear mandate, because the mandate in the city, when you get the city development department to give you the mandate, then that's very good for your stakeholder in the business.
Yeah.
And if the stakeholder feels that this is a truly mandate and they can really understand the stakeholder, the business perspective better in the city hall, then that is real gold. And then they start to invest, and we can ask them to invest in the same direction where we want to go, because building the brand is also important, creating the real proofs and so on. So from the small things you do feel like natural, then you have to build in the mandate and structure it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Caroline. We really appreciate you sharing your insights with us this afternoon. Really interesting to hear about the way in which you have been moving into new areas in Stockholm, as you say, seizing that mandate as well, which is clearly really important. So thank you very much to you for sharing that. And we hope we'd like to invite anyone, if anyone has any quick questions for Caroline, you're welcome to put them in the chat. Otherwise, of course, you're welcome to submit them to City DNA, and we can, of course, handle them later. I'd like to just quickly start wrapping up then, to take you through to the latest part, final part of our presentation. As we said, we've got some Q&A here. As I said, you're welcome to pop a couple of questions if you like. If not, of course, we'll handle them later. I'd like to just wrap up by reminding you that at Toposophy, we have been very busy working in a whole new area of work. It's a brand new content platform. I say content platform because it's taking many different shapes now. And we provoke ourselves, and we want to provoke our audiences to explore the big questions about the future of places and meet the people who are redefining them. And that's you can find this right now if you go to Spotify and you look for Common Ground Toposophy. Just some examples of some of the episodes that you'll be able to find already that we hope will be able to inspire people and take them into new areas and meet some very inspiring stories. If you are cooking or walking the dog and you find yourself a bit depressed by listening to the news, I can guarantee that you're going to be much more enlightened and inspired by what we have to share with you. We've done some very interesting work on this, and the latest episode, which is about business improvement districts, has just come out now. So as a reminder, we have the report is available right now from the City Destinations Alliance. You can find it on the website, and we very much hope that you enjoy diving into it and exploring further some of the themes that we have discussed this afternoon. And if you'd like to get in touch or you have any further questions, then of course don't hesitate to send us an email. You can also find more of our news at toposophy.com/insights. So with that, I'd like to thank you all very much for attending this afternoon, and I think we will wrap it up here. Thank you very much to you all, and good afternoon.